On a beautiful summer day, Sarah takes her son to the park to spend a good time with him.
French?
Fries.
Fries!
As they chat about his deceased father, she excuses herself to get something from a bag. But at this moment, a military chopper flies through, triggering a traumatic experience for her. As she recalls the painful incident where she was the only survivor of an ambush in the military, a man at the park mistakenly bumps into her, so she uses her strength to flip him over and then breaks his nose with a punch. However, she realizes her overreaction and quickly stops. 4 years after this incident, she takes her son to apply for a work visa at the US consulate. While in the train station, she receives an email from a journalist who tells her that the military ambush, where she was the only survivor, was actually a planned event by her supervisors. He tells her to watch a video to see if she recognizes anyone in the video. Not recognizing anyone in the video, she turns over to her son, but realizes he's no longer next to her. She immediately panics and searches around for him. Fortunately, she finds him in the crowd and instructs him to always stay next to her. They eventually arrive at the consulate and walk through several security checks and surveillance. After waiting 3 hours for their turn in a huge hall, her son becomes restless and runs around the hall, insisting that she play hide and seek with him, but she tells him to stay quiet.
Ich will aber Verstecken spielen.
Es langt.
Seeing his sad face, she goes to meet the receptionist who advises her to take the boy to the children's playground. So, she drops her son at the playground and goes to wait for their turn to be called. As soon as it gets to her turn, she quickly goes back to pick up her son from the playground. On the way, she sees a female janitor and a strange man exchanging a bag. As soon as the man sees her, he stops his conversation and walks past Sarah with a weird look. Not thinking much about this, Sarah walks past the man to the playground, but is shocked to find out that her son is nowhere to be found. She begins to look around the consulate for him, but doesn't find any signs of him. So, she begins to panic. When some security officers approach her for questioning, she tells them about her missing son and requests to meet someone who could help her. They take her to meet Eric Kinch, a regional security officer, and Sergeant Donovan. She tells them about her missing son whom she left in the playground, so they escort her as she searches all the closed offices in the building. However, she still doesn't find her son, so Eric reassures her they'll find the boy.
Machen Sie sich keine Vorwürfe. Wir werden Josh finden.
He deploys tons of officers to search all over the building while also escorting her as she joins the search. After searching for a while, she remembers her encounter with the female janitor and strange man, so she takes Eric to the exact spot and tells him to open the door since she suspects that the janitor and strange man have done something to her son. Eric tells her that the door can't be opened due to high security reasons. At this moment, Sergeant Donovan returns and whispers something to Eric, which causes him to look at her in shock. She's confused at his reaction, so he requests a private conversation with her. As they sit together in an office, he begins to look through her files and realizes she's a veteran Special Forces soldier who had been deployed to Afghanistan up until 2017. However, she's uninterested in this and asks for an update on her son, so Sergeant Donovan tells her that she was the only one who checked in at the consulate. He gives her a file to confirm that only her name was found in the database for people who applied for a visa. Confused at this, she tells him that tons of security personnel had seen her walking into the building with her son, but Sergeant Donovan confirms that the security officers saw her alone. Unable to believe this, she requests to see the security footage. As Sergeant Donovan goes to get it, she begs Eric to call the German authorities for help.
Hallo, hier ist Eric Kinch. Miss Wolf möchte mit Ihnen sprechen.
He immediately puts a phone call across to them, so she informs them about the incident and requests their help. But they respond that the US consulate building is an extraterritorial area and that the German authorities have no jurisdiction to exercise power there. They tell her to leave the building for further discussions at the German office. Upon hearing this, she flares up, but Eric immediately stabilizes her and promises to help find her son. As he leaves her alone in the office to attend to other things, she quickly calls her mother and tells her that the consulate has kidnapped her son and is trying to cover up their tracks. But the mother doesn't believe this and even suspects she is having one of her psychopathic episodes. Unable to get help from her mother, Sarah ends the call and decides to take matters into her own hands. She rampages through the cupboards in the office and manages to find an office pin, so she uses it to unlock the door. Then, she removes her coat and ties her hair into a ponytail to avoid being caught by the security guards. As she walks past the playground, she notices her son's toy on the floor and concludes that he has been kidnapped. So, she goes back to the spot where she saw the female janitor and strange man. As an officer inspects the surveillance footage, she becomes distracted and ends up missing the moment when Sarah walks past the hallway. Meanwhile, Sarah attempts to unlock the door that the janitor entered but finds it locked. So, she climbs out of the window and begins to climb the walls of the consulate building. While climbing, she sees a staircase and attempts to jump towards it, but ends up banging her head on a steel grill, causing her to fall several feet to the ground. Now unable to climb the walls again, she decides to break into a basement that leads into the building. As she searches around for signs of her son, she comes across a hallway with tons of locked doors. However, one of the doors is unlocked, so as she opens it to take a look inside, a strange woman suddenly attacks her, but she subdues the woman. When she asks about her missing son, the woman, Irina, claims to know nothing, so she decides to leave. But the woman stops her and volunteers to provide information on every corner of the consulate building on the condition that Sarah helps her escape from the building. She also reveals that she had been held hostage in the building for months by the US consulate. Meanwhile, the security officers are aware of Sarah's escape, so they look through every surveillance camera to find her whereabouts. At the same time, Sarah agrees to help Irina escape from the building, so Irina tells her the number of rooms in the building and how to navigate them. After hearing this, Sarah decides to search the warehouse first. As they walk down the basement hall, they find a security guard and immediately ambush him. Sarah takes his worker's pass and handcuffs him to prevent him from raising an alarm. While doing this, she realizes that things are moving too easily for her, so she urges Irina to move fast to avoid falling into the security's trap. While walking towards the warehouse, they encounter another security guard, so they hide behind a corner. As the guard walks closer in their direction, Sarah begins to experience flashbacks from the day her military team was ambushed in Afghanistan. Although her breath gets heavier, the guard passes them without noticing their presence, so they continue their journey to the warehouse. There, Sarah finds a board detailing the movements of trucks in the building. The next truck would be leaving the building by 4 p.m., and since her son went missing around 2 p.m., she deduces that he hasn't been taken out of the building yet. While looking around the warehouse, she finds a locker containing the logo that was on the bag that the female janitor was holding onto. So she breaks open the locker and finds the exact bag. But as she opens it, she's shocked to find drugs in it.
Ich muss hier weg. Ich muss hier bleiben.
She immediately rushes out of the warehouse with Irina following behind. As they return to Irina's room to hide the drugs, Sarah reveals that she suspects her son was kidnapped after he witnessed an illegal drug transaction at the consulate. She changes her mind about helping Irina escape. Instead, she plans to meet the head of security to expose the illegal drug transaction. When Irina begs for her help in escaping, Sarah confesses that there's no way to escape due to the tight security. Upon hearing this, Irina accuses her of lying and calls her a psycho. This causes them to get into a brawl, where Sarah pulls out a hidden flash drive from Irina's clothes and questions her real identity. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, so Sarah goes to hide while Irina answers the door. But the men at the door begin to attack Irina, so Sarah goes to her rescue and defeats the two men in a brutal one-on-one combat. But as she walks out of the door, Sergeant Donovan suddenly shows up and points a gun at her. As she tries to explain her findings, Eric comes up from behind and injects her with a sedative, causing her to lose consciousness. While unconscious, she experiences flashbacks to her time in the military where she met a fellow soldier and fell in love with him. They made out with each other, and she ended up having a son. After recalling this memory, she regains consciousness and finds herself trapped in a hospital bed with Eric and a doctor standing next to her. Upon seeing them, she begins to reveal details about the drug she had found and how it must be related to her son going missing. She also tells them about Irina, but after hearing her confession, the doctor reveals that her mother had called the consulate to inform them that she suffers from PTSD disorder and could sometimes experience hallucinations. The doctor links the disorder to her painful experience in Afghanistan, where her son's father died while on a mission. But Sarah refuses to believe this. She insists that her son had gone missing and that she had met Irina while searching for him. Upon hearing this, the doctor reveals that there was no one named Irina in the building and that the only woman they found in the basement had denied knowing anything about her. Sarah finds this difficult to believe and insists that they show her CCTV footage to prove that she walked into the building alone. Eric approaches and shows her surveillance footage of the moment she walked into the consulate building alone. He also plays the part where she enters the playground alone with no child by her side. The doctor insists that her brain has been playing tricks with her and tries to convince her to think deeper. Maybe she had lost her son before walking into the consulate building. This causes Sarah to remember that she had lost her son at the train station that morning while going to the consulate, but she also remembers that she had found him in the crowd of people. She continues to insist that she wasn't imagining things and that she had walked with her son into the building. Seeing her confused state, the doctor reveals they'll transport her to a mental hospital the next day.
Bitte machen Sie mich los!
The next day, Sarah wakes up to find Irina losing the straps on her. Irina explains that the security is toying with them and that when she was questioned, she didn't reveal anything about the drugs since she suspected that something was amiss. She tries to convince Sarah to escape with her, but Sarah now believes that her brain is imagining things and that Irina is a figment of her imagination. Seeing this, Irina confesses that her real name is actually Kira Volkova and that her father was one of the richest men in Belarus. However, he was involved in money laundering, and when he tried to switch political sides, they assassinated him and also tried to kill her. But she managed to seek protection from the US Embassy. The flash drive she was holding onto contained evidence that could implicate people who killed her father. The US consulate had promised to take her safely to the United States, but instead, she was trapped in the basement with no means of escape. After hearing this, Sarah still believes her brain's playing a trick on her. So, to prove it isn't a delusion, Irina picks up a scalpel and tries to slit her wrist with it. Seeing this, Sarah chooses to believe her. So, both of them decide to escape through the windows to avoid getting caught by the surveillance camera. While walking in the hallway, Sarah devises a plan. She plans to find either the janitor or the strange man who she saw exchanging the drug bag. In order to evade security, they follow a group of citizens to a hall where a conference would be taking place. Meanwhile, Sergeant Donovan goes to check up on Sarah at the infirmary and discovers she has escaped. While the conference is ongoing, Sarah and Irina hide together in a place. To lure the owners of the drug bag, Irina posts a message about the bag on the consulate's intranet and tells the real owners to DM her. As they wait, Sarah becomes more confused and confesses that her delusions may be real. But Irina assures her that the people at the consulate are trying to use her PTSD to gaslight her into believing their lies. Irina then gives her a tight rubber band and tells her to snap it each time she loses touch with reality. As they chat together, Sarah reveals she came to the consulate to apply for a visa to the US because a huge security company in the US had given her a job. The company was looking for female ex-soldiers, so she applied. As they chat more, they receive a notification from the drug owner telling them to meet at a cafeteria. So, to avoid being captured by surveillance, they climb out of the building and walk through the roof until they get to the cafeteria. Meanwhile, Eric is looking through all the surveillance cameras, trying to find traces of Sarah. After not finding anything, he tells the guards to continue their search while he goes to pick up his daughter from school. At the cafeteria, Irina sits far away, while Sarah meets up with the drug owner. When she asks about her son, he claims to know the boy's whereabouts and makes a deal to tell her once she hands over the drugs. But as a veteran ex-soldier, she immediately sees through his lies and reveals that he doesn't know about her son's whereabouts and was lying to get the drugs from them. It turns out that the man was just a tech guy in the consulate who engaged in drug trafficking to make money. Seeing that he works in the tech department, she requests a key card that gives her access to all floors and offices in the building. He initially hesitates, but when she threatens to expose his drug dealings, he decides to get the all-access key card and tells her to meet him inside the men's restroom in 20 minutes. As she waits for him at the cafeteria, she looks behind and sees Eric eating lunch together with his daughter, so she keeps her head low. Meanwhile, as the guards in the surveillance room inspect everyone at the cafeteria, the tech guy manipulates the building's network, causing them to experience system failure. They immediately notify Eric about this, so he leaves with his daughter to attend to the situation. As soon as he leaves, Sarah walks to his table and picks up a toy his daughter had left behind. She tells Irina that her son's kidnapping must have had nothing to do with the drug case. And seeing Eric with his daughter, she believes that he's trustworthy. But Irina insists that they trust no one at the consulate. They go to find the tech guy in the restroom, and he reveals that the system failure will persist for an hour, so they have less than an hour to roam around the consulate building without getting caught by the surveillance camera. Then he gives them the building's floor plan and all-access key card. Sarah asks for Sergeant Donovan's office, so he points it to them. After this, they return his drug bag before punching him unconscious.
Ja, wir finden was in there.
As soon as they find Sergeant Donovan's office, they begin to look through his emails to find any trace of his involvement with the kidnappers. After not finding anything, Irina decides to look through his computer files. There, she discovers that the sergeant had cosplayed as a security company and had sent her a letter of employment to lure her to apply for a visa at the consulate. As they dig deeper, they discover that the files were forwarded to the sergeant's computer, which means someone else had done the cosplaying, and that the sergeant was only an underling in the game plan. They decide to investigate the real mastermind behind everything. Sarah suggests that they research Eric, so as Irina types his name on the internet, they discover he is a former soldier deployed to Afghanistan. As she reads more details about him, they realize he had also been assigned as a regional specialist in Islamabad, Pakistan. This triggers Sarah to remember the video that a journalist had sent to her while on her way to the consulate. The journalist had asked if she recognized anyone from the video. Upon remembering this, she immediately logs into her email account to pull out the video. As she re-watches it, she's able to recognize that Eric is in the video. It turns out that the video is somehow related to her military's team deployment to Afghanistan. She becomes interested to know how Eric relates to her deployment, so she recites the journalist's number from the email and immediately dials it. As soon as he picks up the call, she informs him that the man in the video is Eric. After the journalist verifies this information, he begins to reveal that Eric was a former soldier in Afghanistan who was in charge of deployments. He had been involved in tons of corrupt practices, but was always exonerated each time he was reported to the authorities. The journalist also reveals that Eric had leaked soldiers' information to terrorist groups, which led to the ambush that killed her boyfriend and military teammates. As he reveals more details, Irina sights Sergeant Donovan walking towards the office, so she tells Sarah to hurry up with the call.
Sarah, jetzt!
Man sieht ihn im Spiegel.
Meanwhile, the journalist asks for her help in identifying the man that Eric was speaking with in the video. He sends an enhanced picture to her email and tells her to identify the man. But as they download the picture, Sergeant Donovan walks into the office and finds them standing around his table. Sarah immediately tackles him to the ground, and they use the opportunity to escape from his office. But he regains his standing and begins to chase after them while calling for backups. They run far away from him, and Sarah uses the all-access card to get into another section of the building. They lock him out using a ladder and manage to escape through the ceiling. When they escape to the rooftop, Sarah begins to explain details surrounding her team's ambush. She explains that her military team had been suddenly ambushed by terrorists, and although they fought hard, the terrorists overpowered them. When backup arrived, all her teammates had already died, leaving her as the only survivor. After hearing the story, Irina pulls out her laptop to check on the downloaded picture. As soon as Sarah sees the picture, she recalls that the man Eric was talking to was a terrorist member they had killed in Afghanistan. This confirms that Eric was conniving with terrorists. After realizing the truth, she decides to return to the warehouse in the building. Irina protests against this and suggests that they submit the evidence to authorities to have Eric arrested. But Sarah insists on going to the warehouse. There, Sarah advises Irina to sneak into one of the trucks leaving the consulate building. She also instructs her to take a train to France and then fly to Mexico in order to get into the United States. As Sarah distracts the truck drivers, Irina uses the opportunity to hide in one of the trucks. Meanwhile, the drivers begin to fire at Sarah, so she runs back into the building and fights against tons of security guards. Eric eventually catches her, and they get into one-on-one combat. During the fight, they fall into a pool where Eric tries to drown her in it. She manages to free herself from his hold and rushes out of the pool to grab a gun by the poolside. She holds it to his head and questions him about the whereabouts of her son. When he reveals that her son is alive, she begins to question his reason for luring her to the consulate to kidnap her son. To this, he confesses that he had tried to kill her since she was the only survivor and witness to the ambush. He threatens that her son will starve to death if she kills him. Seeing that he has no intention of revealing her son's location, she hits him in the face before throwing his gun into the pool. Then, she leaves to find her son without his help. Using the building's map, she searches everywhere for her son, but finds no trace of him.
Josh?
As she looks at her watch, she discovers that the 1-hour grace period is over, which means that the building's surveillance cameras will regain signal. So, she prepares for the worst. First, she grabs some chemicals and mixes them to make an explosion. Then, she blows up a part of the building before escaping through the rooftop to another section of the building. The explosion grabs the attention of the consul officer, who immediately calls Eric and instructs him to follow the protocol, which means Sarah is to be shot dead on site. Tons of officers are immediately deployed to the building to find Sarah. Meanwhile, Sarah finds Eric's daughter and lies that she was sent to pick her up. When the little girl doubts this, Sarah pulls out the toy she had found in the cafeteria to convince the girl. Seeing the toy, the girl agrees to go with her. So, Sarah takes the girl to an oxygen chamber and locks it. Then, she calls Eric and tells him to release her son in exchange for his daughter. To put pressure on him, she turns off the chamber's air supply to make his daughter suffocate to death. After a while, the little girl becomes dizzy, so Sarah puts her to bed. Later, the consul officer calls Sarah and tries to convince her to release the girl, but Sarah begins to confess to everyone that Eric had connived with terrorists to ambush her team, and that he had lured her to the consulate to kill her. The consul officer doesn't believe this and concludes it's her PTSD delusions. Meanwhile, Eric is convinced that Sarah won't hurt his daughter, so he tells her to release the girl. Sarah initially hesitates, but as soon as she sees the little girl losing consciousness, she immediately restores the oxygen level. Then, she agrees to walk out of the chamber on the condition that she speaks privately with Eric. As soon as she releases the girl, Eric steps into the chamber to replace his daughter. He immediately turns off the cameras and tells her that he can't release her son while she's alive. When she asks for the reason behind his actions, he grabs a seat and begins to explain that he had created a fake security company and offered her a job to lure her to the consulate to apply for a visa. He also kidnapped her son and was anticipating that as soon as she went in search of him, they would kill Irina to make it seem like she committed the murder. Then, they would follow protocol and shoot her on sight. However, he never anticipated that she would escape from the building and pull tons of stunts to find her son. Eric also confesses that after working years for the government in the military, they abandoned him when he incurred an injury. So, to cater for his family, he had to sell information to the enemies for money, which led her team to be ambushed. Unable to listen to his explanation, she yells at him to leave, but instead, he pulls out his gun and shoots her in the abdomen. Then, he shoots himself in the leg before staging the scene to look like she did it. Then, he walks out of the chamber, accusing her of trying to kill him. The chamber closes with Sarah in it. As she breathes her last, she recalls the day of the ambush and how her boyfriend had died. Her PTSD causes her to hallucinate that his body is lying next to her in the chamber. But the memory of her son removes the hallucination and brings her back to reality. So she gathers her strength and pulls out Eric's daughter's toy from underneath a bed. Meanwhile, the officers surround the chamber with bombs in order to bomb her in it. As the countdown for the bombing begins, Sarah crawls with her last strength and opens the chamber. Then, she plays the recording of Eric's confession. It turns out that the toy doubled as a recording device. As soon as the consul officer hears the confession, she immediately orders Eric's arrest. Sarah's son is eventually rescued from the secret room where he was held hostage. As for Sarah, she survives the gun wounds and reunites with her son. 8 weeks later, Sarah is granted a visa to the United States. She makes a video call with Irina, who has managed to escape to the US. They promise to see each other soon.
I will. See you soon, psycho. See you.
The movie ends with Sarah traveling to the US with her son.